There'll be more oil and gas exploration in the North Sea after the government announced it's offering up to 100 new development licences to companies. Ministers say the projects will boost energy security and support skilled jobs, but the decision is at odds with climate scientists. Here's our environment correspondent, Jonah Fisher.
These new North Sea licences will take years to yield results, and they'll have very little impact on the oil and gas prices that we all pay. This licensing round is part of the government's response to a crisis triggered by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It's aimed at reducing our dependence on imports of fossil fuels from abroad. About 100 licences are expected to be issued, with parts of the North Sea off Norfolk, Lincolnshire and Yorkshire set to be fast-tracked because they can start producing faster. So how does exploring for the fossil fuels that heat our planet fit in with the government's promises to fight climate change? Jacob Rees-Mogg, the business secretary, says fossil fuels are still needed as we transition to renewable energy, and that the UK's production methods are cleaner, meaning new North Sea oil and gas will have less of a carbon footprint. That won't reassure climate scientists. They say greenhouse gas emissions are already leading to more extreme weather events, like heat waves and drought. The advice of the United Nations and the International Energy Agency is clear. If we want to keep global temperature rises under 1.5 degrees, then there can be no more fossil fuel projects. The first licences from this new North Sea round are expected to be issued early next year. Jonah Fisher, BBC News.
Well, let's talk to Dr. Simon Evans, who is the deputy editor of the climate science website Carbon Brief. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. How do you see the awarding of these new licences in the context of net zero?
So I think the key thing to bear in mind about these licences, which are on the face of it a response to the current energy crisis, is that, you know, as your correspondent mentioned in his introduction, it's going to take many years for them to actually yield new oil and gas supplies, whereas the energy crisis we're facing is very much about this winter, next winter. It's a very immediate situation, which this licensing won't do anything to affect. In terms of the climate impact, the key thing here is the fact that, just economics 101, if you increase supply, so if you drill more oil and gas, then even if we're replacing imports, we're increasing the supply of oil and gas globally, and that's likely to increase demand globally and therefore emissions.
Why would it increase demand rather than just decrease prices?
Well, that's economics 101. If you decrease prices by increasing supply, then that increases demand. That's just how it works. Now, there's question marks about exactly how much it would increase demand. It's not going to be one-to-one, but certainly that's what you would expect on a global basis.
Offshore Energies UK says the new North Sea oil fields would be less polluting than their predecessors, and that there would be an environmental bonus. What's your response to that?
Well, the government said earlier this year that it would only issue new oil and gas licenses for the North Sea if they could pass what it called a climate compatibility checkpoint. Now, it has now set out the terms of that checkpoint, and effectively what they've done with that is to ignore the emissions resulting from actually burning the oil and gas. So they're only considering the emissions created, during the production phase, which is obviously only a tiny fraction of the total involved. When you get it out of the ground and actually use it to run cars or whatever. So, while the production phase of generating oil and gas in the North Sea may be a bit cleaner than in, some other places internationally, again, that's, a marginal saving against what is going to be an increase in oil and gas demand and emissions.
Thank you, Dr. Simon Evans. The BBC understands that Downing Street has blocked a plan drafted by the business department